In January 1926, the chief engineer quit the Cincinnati subway project, a subway its own streetcars could not fit. They were built for tracks 5.5 inches wider, and that was deliberate. After 12 years on the job, he left 2 miles of finished tunnel under the middle of the city, 4 stations under the street. The concrete is still sound, 100 years on. What is not down there is rails, only the wooden runners they were meant to be nailed to. It was built to move 110,000 people an hour. It never carried a passenger. It still hasn't. And the city paid for it until 1966. Why Cincinnati built it that way is not the story you will be told. The tunnel sits inside a canal. The Miami and Erie Canal ran down through the middle of Cincinnati on its way to the Ohio River. By 1910, it was dead water. In 1911, the state let the city lease the bed of it for street, sewerage, boulevard, and subway purposes. They signed the lease in August 1912. The canal was valued at $800,000. The city agreed to pay 4% of that a year, $32,000 every year from 1912. The first shovel went in 8 years later. The city paid rent on that canal for 8 years before anyone dug a thing. Now the warnings. There are 3 in the story. Everyone was public. Everyone was right. And after everyone, going on was the sane thing to do. Here is the first. March 1912. The mayor names a commission. Council will not pay for its study, so 3 business clubs pay for it instead. The commission hires an engineer from Chicago named Bion Arnold. His report lands that December. Cincinnati, he says, is too small to justify the large expense necessary for an elevated road or subway. Though the steep ground and the tight downtown might make it a special case. They took the special case. Then the engineers priced it properly. Frank Krug took charge in January 1914. He reported a year later, $11,594,000 for about 16.5 miles of railway. That is not what went on the ballot. They worked out 8 cheaper plans. The one they picked came to about $6 million. It got there partly by running the trains on the street, in traffic, for much of the route. The board's own account calls that but a temporary arrangement at the best. $6 million. That is the number Cincinnati voted on. On the 14th of March 1916, Council asked for the money. The vote was set for the 25th of April. Before that vote, the board printed a promise. No part of the $6 million bond issue will be expended until the plan of operation is definitely determined and approved. It ran in the daily papers. Voters read it before the election. Those are the court's words, not mine. Cincinnati voted 39,700 to 6,638, almost 6-1. A year later, they voted on the other half. April 1917, 11 days after America entered the war, the city approved Ordinance 96, the deal to run the thing with the street railway. 2-1 this time. 10 months later, the Supreme Court of Ohio took that deal apart. The case is Campbell against Cincinnati Street Railway, decided the 5th of March 1918. 3 of the 4 attacks failed. The law behind the subway held. What fell was one clause about money. The deal sent the system's earnings to pay the company's own debts. That, the court held, was a pledging of the city's credit for the private debts of a street railway company. The state constitution forbids it. Be careful here. Most of what gets said about this subway goes wrong at exactly this point. The court did not ban the subway. It did not touch the bonds. It did not touch the law. That law told the board to construct the rapid transit system and thereafter to control and operate it. What the court struck was the deal to run it, and no new deal was ever agreed, not for want of trying. 24 days later, they were back at the table. The only open question, the trade press said, was how to split the earnings. That was the one thing the Constitution had just closed. The talks ran 5 months and produced a streetcar fare deal. The subway fell out of them. Meanwhile, a taxpayer named John Rogers sued. He wanted the board held to the promise it had printed. In October 1918, the trial judge threw it out. In December, the appeal court agreed and went further. The board, it said, made declarations analogous to those contained in political platforms. Then this. History shows that these pledges are not redeemable at their face value, but the reason underneath is stranger than a broken promise. The board never had the power to make it. The board was without power to make such a contract, and any attempt to do so would be void. The promise voters read in their papers was dead the day it was printed. So the plan was gone and the promise was worthless. Now the board had to choose: spend anyway or stop. In May 1918, it spent $80,000 to keep the drawings moving. By July, that was gone too, and the work stopped for the year. Then the second warning. March 1919. Moses Blau ran the state office that checked public books. He told the city that on a job this size, the actual cost is always far in excess of the original estimate. He put the real cost at $12 million, not $6, and the yearly charge on the debt at $726,000. That is 10 months before the first shovel. His $12 million was a guess, not an audit. By 1921, it was close to the city's own number, and they kept going. Every time, going on was the same thing to do. The money was voted, the canal was leased and being paid for, and the new boulevard on top could not be built until the tunnel under it was. Krug said so in June 1919. This portion must be built before any work on the parkway can be done. So the canal had to go. They set it for September 1919, then put it back a month. The power company's plant drew canal water through its condensers. The water was finally turned into Mill Creek on the 22nd of October. The dam that did it went to the John Rubel Construction Company. The bid was $2,700. $2,700 ended a canal that had run for 90 years. The 28th of January 1920. The mayor of Cincinnati climbed into a steam shovel. He took the first scoop of earth out of the dry canal at Walnut Street. Now the sum that had been running underneath all of it. Between 1915 and 1919, steel went from $55 a tonne to $105. Concrete doubled. Digging went up by half. And the $6 million budget was priced off the 1915 drawings. That December, the builder sent on a letter from his cement supplier. A coal strike had shut most of the cement mills in the region, and the $6 million was never sold in one go. $80,000 in 1918, a canal issue of $1,200,000 in 1919. Then, in July 1921, $1 million of rapid transit bonds at 5.5% sold to a group of banks. In 1916, they had planned on 4.25%. Those bonds were written to come due on the 2nd of January 1967. Hold that date, it comes back. In August 1921, the assistant chief engineer wrote a paper about what he was building. His name was Frank Raschig. It is the best document in this story because it is the job describing itself while it is still being dug. The loop was to run 16.5 miles. 2.5 of those were tunnel. Twin tubes, 13 feet wide, one track in each. One track on purpose, he writes, to get the piston action of the cars and thus secure better ventilation. Third rail, no level crossings. Top speed, 45 miles an hour. 4-car trains, one every 69 seconds. 110,000 people an hour. It carried none. The ground is why it is all still down there. They cut it in the open, with no shoring, through sand and gravel that held almost no water. The one thing that went right all century was the dirt. And in the same paper, the same month, Raschig writes down the two things that will end it. First, the money. The total estimated cost of the system in 1915 was $6 million, and this is the amount authorised. Due to intervention of the war and the higher cost of construction, this amount will not be sufficient. He says they will need 4 to 5 million more. The 6 million reaches about 11 of the 16 miles. Second, who runs it? Traction matters in the city were unsettled, he writes, so the board thought it not advisable to take up the matter in definite form at present. 3 years after the ruling, nobody knew who would run this railway. Not forgotten, put off, on purpose. 2 months later, the third warning, October 1921. A committee of the Chamber of Commerce reports that the money already spent is a dead loss and should be charged off the city ledger. Drop the whole thing, it says. It is to be regretted that monies were provided and work upon the same was begun and carried on without proper study and careful investigation of the city's actual needs. And straight away, the other half of that fact. It belongs with it. Alfred Bettman chaired the City Planning Commission. He said the report was unauthorised and that he would look into it before saying anything. The money that October, 3 million spent, 3 million left. 3 of the 6 sections built. In November, the voters were asked for 4.5 million more, for a boulevard on top of the loop. They said no by almost 2 to 1. The 17th of November, 1922. Mayor George Carell calls a meeting of the board. He tells them the present financial condition of Cincinnati and the views of the voters as expressed at the late election demand that work be stopped on the loop. The board does not agree. The meeting ends with nothing settled. And here is the thing that decides this episode. The board did not have to listen to him. Under the city charter, it could proceed with the work regardless of the intervention of city officials. It could have ordered the mayor to sign the bonds. It could have sued him if he refused. On the 1st of December 1922, the board met. It decided not to ask for further bond issues, given the state of the city's money, but to proceed with the work until the present supply of money was consumed. Here is the audit from the board's own 1922 accounts. Bonds sold, 3,930,000. Bonds approved but never issued, 2,070,000. That includes 500,000 the mayor would not sign. Cincinnati did not run out of money for its subway. In December 1922, with $2 million of approved bonds still unsold, it decided to stop asking. And the debt got paid anyway. The interest did not come out of the city budget. It came out of a small extra tax set by the 1916 law, charged every year, raising about $380,000. The money to service the debt turned up on its own every year, whether anyone built anything or not. Early in 1923, the 2 miles of downtown tunnel were finished. In December 1923, the board said no more bonds were needed. The money on hand would carry the line as far as Oakley. That was wrong. By October 1924, about 6 of the 16 miles were done. Done, as the city's own record puts it, with the exception of the laying of rails, furnishing the stations, etc. And here is the gap. To reach Oakley, lay rails on all of it, and finish the stations, they needed about $1,300,000 more. By early 1925, the board was selling spare land to keep going. The sums came back too small. By 1925, the tunnel was there. 2 miles of it, finished and dry. And the question the board had put off in 1921 came due on its own. In December 1925, men from the Cincinnati Street Railway walked it. This was the company everyone assumed would run it. They said the subway, as now completed, would not be practical for operation unless the extension was constructed. The next summer, the board voted $50,000 of bond money for a traffic survey, a first step, it said, toward leasing the system out. The company that was meant to run it had already said it would not work as built. And in January 1926, Frank Krug quit. He had taken charge in 1914. He wrote the report that priced it in 1915. He ordered the first contracts so the boulevard could sit on the tunnel roof. His reason? Only a few months more work was needed to place the line in operation. It never carried a passenger. Raschig took over. 6 years before, he had written what the system would do. With rapid transit, the whole pulse and lifeblood of the city will be quickened. Social intercourse will be easier, for distances will be partially annihilated. Now the thing nobody tells you. It is in Raschig's own paper, in print, in August 1921, 4 years before any of this. The subway was built to standard gauge, 4 feet 8.5 inches. Cincinnati's own streetcars ran on rails 5 feet 2.5 inches apart, 5.5 inches wider, and it was not a slip. He gives the reason in the same sentence: the desirability of keeping surface cars, except fast suburban and interurban cars, out of the system. The city's own trams could never enter that tunnel, by design. Written down in a journal in 1921. The tube stood 14 feet 9 inches above the rail. He explains that too. This height was adopted to admit standard freight cars, as it is possible that movement of freight may be permitted at night time. So, a tunnel gauged for a train the city did not own, sized for freight that never came, built for 110,000 people an hour. It carried none. The rest goes quickly. By 1927, the parts above ground were nearly done, and there was no money to fit any of them out. No track, key links missing, the books near zero. The board's charter had an end date in it, not later than January 1st, 1929. In October 1928, Central Parkway opened on top of the subway. It runs on land bought for the trains. Then the reuses. This part gets told as comedy. It is not. In 1936, the Engineers Club proposed running the city's trams through the tubes to the suburbs. It could not be done. The reason had been in print for 15 years. The wheels were 5.5 inches too far apart. After the war, a firm wanted to lease the tunnel and run freight cars in, loading under the Berger Brewing Company. The city approved a 5-year lease. Then, its own account says, it was discovered that freight cars wouldn't fit. The tunnel was built tall enough for freight on purpose in 1921. What the record does not say is why, 25 years on, the cars would not go. 1939, a riverfront car park. 1940, an underground tram line, shelved when the war came. 1948, the city said forget the whole thing. In the early 60s, federal money fitted out one station as a fallout shelter. In 1969, a church planned a candlelit service for 500 people in what it called the catacombs of Cincinnati. It could not get insurance. A winery wanted it. A nightclub wanted it. None of them happened. In 1966, the 1916 bonds were paid off. With interest and taxes, the whole thing cost the city $13,019,982.45. That gets told as a punchline. It should not be. The bonds sold in 1921 were written to come due on the 2nd of January 1967. The last payment was not guilt. It was not a reckoning. It was paper falling due on the date printed on it. In 1957, the waterworks ran a 48-inch main down the West Tube. It uses about 2 miles of the tunnel. It is still there. In 2007, the city's own engineers priced the tunnels again. $100 million to make them fit for trains. $19.6 million to fill them in. One of those engineers was Martha Kelly. She said this: "We can't just continue to pour money into these. We do need to make a decision on the future of rapid transit." An inspection in 2023, reported by WCPO, found seepage, salt, stalactites, cracked concrete, and the water main leaking. In September 2025, the city put the tunnel out to tender. It wanted a study. Can we breathe new life into this long-abandoned subterranean space and create something extraordinary beneath our streets? Trains are on the list of allowed uses. Bids closed that October. There is still no award and no cancellation on the public record. 5 months after that tender went out, on the 19th of February 2026, the City Council passed an emergency order. It let the city sign away an easement. The right it gave up was the right to construct, maintain, repair and operate a subway for rapid transit and railway purposes, overland on Harris Avenue in Norwood. One of those rights was granted in March 1925. Another is a court order from that September. That is the year the board was selling spare land to keep digging. It was still taking easements, and the buyer is told in writing what it is buying over. Petitioner hereby acknowledges that it is aware that the reinforced concrete rapid transit tunnels in the location of the easements have been filled with a combination of lightweight and medium weight controlled density fill. Filled with concrete. The city manager checked with the roads department, the waterworks and the sewer district. Together, they found that the tunnels and the easements no longer serve any municipal purpose and are no longer in use. The paperwork calls the site an underutilized site burdened by obsolete infrastructure. There is nothing wrong with any of this. That is the point. The land was valued at $40,500. The buyer paid $85,000. The planning commission had signed off 17 months earlier. The city shed $700,000 of upkeep and kept the sewer easement it still needs. Everyone involved did their job, and it is one plot of land in Norwood. The downtown tunnel is untouched. It is the subject of that open study. One more thing about that street. In July 1925, the tram company agreed with the board to lift the tracks on Harris Avenue. They were to go back down after the rapid transit subway has been completed to Norwood. The tracks came up in 1925. In 2026, the city sold the right to put them back, over tunnels already full of concrete. The lease the city changed in January 1917 gave it the canal route forever as a public street or boulevard, and for sewerage, conduit or subway purposes. Forever has been sold off in pieces since 1994. The rest of it is still there. 2 miles of tunnel under Central Parkway, 4 platforms nobody stands on, and, running away into the dark in both tubes, the wooden runners. The wood is still waiting for the rails.